Welcome to Dungeon Master Talk, a podcast by Dungeon Masters for Dungeon Masters. I am Dungeon Master Shay, and with me as always is...
Dungeon Master Kyle. How are you today, Shay?
Bro, I'm doing great, man. I see you. And not just on a TV screen, you are right here.
Yeah, this makes three in a row.
I know. This is really, really kind of creeping me out because, we've never done that 3 in a row.
No, this is a new record for us. It really is, listeners, because I think we've mentioned this enough that, Shay and I live hours apart.
Mm-hmm.
So this is quite special that we've been able to make 3 episode recordings sitting at the same table. This time, a dining room table, not a folding table. So we've upgraded in our comfort, which hopefully translates to better words. We'll find out.
We've actually moved out of the basement and we moved into the dining room. So that's an upgrade for us.
Yeah,
and
we have central lighting.
Yes. Our families have been okay, your nerdiness can actually rise above the floorboards and come into the regular part of the house.
I don't know if they actually okayed it. It's more that they just...
rolled their eyes and just kind of let us go.
Yeah. So there is a difference between not objecting and accepting. And I think we got not objecting.
That's probably more accurate, yeah. Well, listeners, we are so thankful that you are here. You're spending your quality time with us, and we don't take that for granted. We really, really do appreciate you being here with us on episode 21, the episode before the final countdown.
The finale. So this is the penultimate, the one that comes before the last?
Yes. Happy season Eve.
Yes. Season finale Eve.
I guess last one was season Adam and then season Eve, and then it's going to be...
But
I had to throw that in there.
I'm proud of you for having that keyed up. I'm surprised that you got to use it before I got to use it.
I mean, we kind of used it simultaneously. But...
Yeah.
Okay, so listeners, like I said, this is the season finale Eve. So that means we have this one and we have our next episode. So this is going to look a little differently. This is going to be kind of more of a throwback to some of our original episodes where we're just going to talk about spells and magic in this one. And we will wrap the campaign up next episode, and then we'll kind of outline what the plan is going to be kind of for now in that respect. As far as a game update, I'm not sure. We might be having one. Depends on schedules. Our schedules for this month are getting kind of wonky. I think you guys have one of the books, don't you?
We will.
Okay, so you should have an up.
Either this episode or the next episode will have a update for me depending on where it falls in your editing.
Okay.
Because as of the recording, we have not played this month. By the time you're able to get them out, we will have. So I should have the game update to you, listeners. So then will be now when that happens.
Oh, wrong one.
I got a walk-in track and applause, listeners, on his soundboard.
I was going to say, that is actually the walk-in track normally. I didn't exactly expect to hit the wrong button, so that didn't help me at all.
It's okay. I was seated, but I walked in. I am that talented. That one would call that magic, and I think that could lead into this quite well. He's not loving my puns today, listeners, all day. But
his dad joke is working. It needs some work, and we'll
buffering.
get there eventually. Yeah, buffering. Nice.
Thank you.
All right, so spells and magic. Why are we talking about spells and magic, Kyle?
Honestly, I wanted to revisit spell and magic because what I've done for my campaign, and it's something you and I've talked about a lot, we've done something very similar for our campaigns. I did it because I was playing, and still am playing with people who this is their first campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And so I made some changes, rule zeros, if you would, to how magic is treated in our campaign to make it a little bit user-friendly. And I want to bring up this conversation for other DMs because I think there were pros and cons. And if I had the ability to do it again, I don't know that I would change, and I don't know that I wouldn't. So I'd like to kind of talk about that because I do think if I lead this same party through a second campaign, if's the wrong word, when I lead this party through a second campaign, I think I will do magic a little bit more true to the rulebook. And so I kind of want to talk about why that is, why I rule zeroed it in the first place. And then also, I think it's a little bit relevant because with the upcoming new rule set that's going to be dropping in just a few months after this episode drops. I think it's a good time to really talk about it because there are some little bit of tweaks and changes coming to Magic and how that's going to work. We might hit on that lightly in here, listeners, but this is definitely not going to be the episode to come get what that means.
Correct. And I know you said, in a private conversation, like you've kind of looked over the book a little bit. I've heard some YouTube videos and maybe an article here and there, but I haven't really like explored the new edition of 5e. 1 D&D, I think, is what they're actually officially calling it.
Yeah, I think that's what I've seen too. I've looked at like teases of it. I have not gotten... Listeners, I don't have any pre-knowledge. I have not read the thing because I can't. As soon as I can, I'm going to be. There's what I've read, there's some things I'm very excited for. There's things that I'm cautiously optimistic for and things I'm willing to give a shot. So overall positive feelings towards this. Although, as someone who has only recently begun to play around with Artificers, a little bummed to see them left out of the base class. But again, it is 5e rule compliant, so I think... If you want to pick up this new rule set that's coming out, you can still roll in the 5e Artificer. Just know it might feel a little bit antiquated next to some of the other changes based on what I'm reading. I do feel like overall players were getting a little bit of a power buff, but also having a little bit more pre-decision stuff that we have to make. But all that is something that we will push to the future right now. Let's just put it that way.
Future Kyle and future Shay will deal with that when that comes.
Yep. Want to talk to you guys when we have definitive information beyond what we have when we can actually have our hands on the material. Whereas right now we're going to be reading other people's takes on it and then regurgitating that to you guys. That's never been our style. So we don't want to do that.
Nope. So jumping back into Magic then. So the reason we're bringing this up is there's multiple different ways that I've seen where DMs will allow players to use spells. Mm-hmm. Some are very raw or rules as written.
Yep.
I just love saying raw, because either it sounds like you're going to get in a fight with your Magic or, the Magic will get in a fight with you. But, either one will happen. I've actually heard of a point-based system.
I have read about...
You've kind of read about that, yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a sorcery point kind of thing, if you're familiar with sorcerers and their points. It's something to that effect where you can expend so many points for a certain level spell, and then obviously you dwindle down, and then that's kind of how you lose your spells for the day versus slots.
The idea of doing that versus slots is allowing for a little bit more of that high level. Like sometimes you can just only cast your strong spells, but then you're done. Like you're going to get to a point where it's just like your cantrip only. You did actually even spend your ability to do your low level. Whereas slots, you spend out your high, then you still have like your highest level couple slots. Maybe you only have one.
Yeah. And
then you spend the next tier, then the next tier out, and then you still have and then you're down to your cantrips. And so it's just a kind of a different idea of like, the mindset behind that is, well, if you're using your most powerful spell twice, then like your power is going to... It's kind of like the idea of being a lifter of something. Mm-hmm. If you do a full body press twice, then your ability to go do curls is going to be reduced because you did expend energy.
All that energy,
and so it's trying to hit at that, which makes me like that mechanic. I do. I've never implemented it. But in that concept, when I just logic through it, I'm like, oh, that sounds cool to me. Mm-hmm. But then, honestly, why I haven't implemented that as a DM is the changes I have made to the system have been so that I could be less involved with helping my players do it by making it a little bit easier on them.
That makes sense.
Whereas I feel if I implement the point system, I am going to have to explain it quite frequently. Not saying that I don't have to re-explain spell slots every now and then. My party's gotten pretty good at it now. But every now and then it's just like, hey, we haven't played in a couple months. I haven't thought about it in a bit. Kyle, how do spell slots work again?
Right.
And I'm now so used to it. But when spell slots were a first thing, I was like, let's get the book. It's not a natural thing. No, I don't think it's as intuitive as it maybe could have been.
So for our party, it's what, 50% of the players are magic casters of some sort?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Cleric, druid,
wizard,
paladin, wizard.
Druid again.
Yep. Okay, that's 5 out of 8.
It's easy to count the non-ones.
Does our ranger have spells?
No.
No. Okay. Oh, he's a fighter. He just likes to do long distance like a ranger.
Yeah,
okay.
He's a fighter that's definitely specialized in the long distance.
That's right.
And he has magic items, which is why I think the party keeps thinking he has magic because he does cool stuff with his weapons.
Yeah.
Like blinding people and that sort of thing. And so... it's easy to think, oh, he's doing magic. And no, he's magic items do magic things. He's not casting spells.
Let's see, I think in my party, I think I'm about 50% as well. And one of them, depending on the personality they're currently working with at that time, is a spellcaster or not.
Yep.
And then I have a multi-class ranger that has some spells. Other than that, I have a warlock, a cleric, and a sorcerer. So it's kind of a range. Because you don't have a sorcerer, but you have the wizard. So that's kind of the trade-off for us.
I think part of why I wanted to bring this up is I've heard it said amongst other D&D players that the non-magic wielding classes, they just don't have as much to do. And I think that's fundamentally false. I think every class has obviously its stuff that it's better at.
Yeah.
I think the rules around magic and spellcasting within D&D were made such that they wouldn't feel that way if you follow it all to the letter. Because then it is going to be much more restrictive when your spellcasters can use their best of the best abilities. Mm-hmm. But I think when it's that way, it's also less new player friendly. And I do think for a decent percentage of D&D players, what's attractive to the game is the more fantastical things you can do. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the ones that's like, well, I can almost see it, being possible for me to bulk up and become good with a sword. Mm-hmm. Not, maybe not me, but you listener maybe could. My knees are such that I wouldn't want to do that now. Yeah. Also, I guess, like, if you think in the old times, I'd be an old man.
Same.
Let's not think of that. But
well, and something to also kind of piggyback, because you had talked about, like, earlier using your high level spells and then kind of working your way down. I mean, you also have the magic users like clerics that have like guiding bolt. Yep. And you can scale up that way too. Like you can use a first level like type spell, but you can also use it with a higher spell slot to do more damage.
Yep, really oomping it.
Exactly. So, for example, Guiding Bolt is the one that comes to mind because my cleric uses it fairly frequently. On its face, it's a first level spell that does 4d6 radiant damage, I think.
Which is powerful first level spell.
But every spell slot that you go up above the first, you add a d6 for damage. So, like, if you cast it at second level, it's 5d6. If you go third level, it's, you can do the math. But I've also seen people do that with healing spells. Like, if they have a healing word that they want to use at, like, a fifth level, they can add more d8s. Either D8s or D4s. I can't remember which one that one is. But
I always confuse them, in all honesty.
But all of that to say, like you can go from high to low, or you can use basic or more basic spells at higher levels to kind of maximize that.
And that's really the reverse of it. That's the strength of the spell slot method versus the spell point methods.
True.
Spell slot allows you to cast up, and that's the base rule set. So you can use you can cast spells that the book says you can, which I believe is pretty much all of them starting at level 1. You can cast higher. I think there might be a few you can't. Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. So listeners, don't quote me.
Well, usually with cantrips, like once you hit certain levels, that's when they get more powerful.
Right. That's you add another, like Magic Missile, you add another bolt at a certain level.
Yeah, or like Sacred Flame. And I'm thinking clerics tonight for some reason, but Sacred Flame, I think it's like at 5th level you get 2d8. And I think
are you teasing your next character by being in love with clerics right now?
No, I've got two clerics built the same way, so that's why it's fresher in my head because I hear it like double usually. But yeah, it's like you get like two dice at level 5, and I think a third one at 8, and then I think it just keeps going up from there. Yep. So like you can't use a cantrip at a higher spell slot, but the damage does go up as you level up. That's
why at that level, your level 1 spells, you can cast them up. The spell point method allows you it's the reverse in a way. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily that way. It's how you use it. They're both, I think both are great systems, and I do not fault one versus the other. So really, I think that what I did in my campaign, I think it's similar to what you did in your campaign. We went with spell slots because that was in the basic rules. And then when it comes to magic, there's the components.
Yes.
The things that you have to have or have to do to cast the spell. And then there's the spell casting time.
Yep.
In my campaign, I said that if there was a vocal component, we honored that. You have to be able to speak. If
Okay.
then if there was a physical component, like you had to do,
Somatic.
a somatic component, then you had to do that. If there was a material component, I told my players I didn't want to track that. I was a new DM. This was years ago now. I always lose track.
2018.
Yep. So almost
19. It was 19. It was right before COVID.
It was early 2019. So 5 years ago. And I had been a player, but I wasn't big into the spellcasting stuff. I played characters that could, but that wasn't what I flexed into. And I had tracked my material components before, and it was fine. I had no qualms with it, but I was playing mostly with a new party. And I was like, what can I do to make this easier so that my spellcasters aren't stressing about this, so that I'm not constantly asking, well, do you have X? Allow the game to keep moving, because I also knew we weren't going to be a party that was going to be able to meet frequently. It was going to be monthly. And so I wanted us to be able to hit the story beats, have some fun. And so I dropped the material component. And there has been some times that a player was looking at their spell, saw that it could do this thing that they wanted to do, said that they'd cast it. We did it. Narratively, we moved on. And then I looked and I said, oh, wait, that was supposed to take you an hour to cast that spell. Oops. And sometimes we've been good about it. We caught it in the moment. And then other times, I don't have the spell memorized. They said they cast. I asked what it did. I didn't pull it up myself. Now that I'm using D&D Beyond as my tool so I can pull up my character's play sheets, I'm getting a lot better at tracking that. But I think that's part of that feeling that the non-magic playing people have of like the spellcasters. They always just have a spell for that. They almost like the old Apple. There's an app for that. Wizards have a spell for that.
Well played.
As a player of Magic the Gathering, the card game, you need to have the resources to cast your spells. That's really your limit. And so what I'm kind of thinking that I've done is I've unbalanced the game, because I've essentially said, well, you have all the resources you need all the time. And I think that why this has been so heavy on my mind is honestly one of the things I read that's going to be different with the new rule set. I knew I said we weren't going to talk about it.
I mean, we can touch on it. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, the fact that you're going to have access to all the spells of your archetype, of your class, but you're going to have to prepare. And that's going to be across the board. Not just the current classes after that, but all of them, including wizards. And so then I was thinking like, wow, at first I was like, wow, that's broken. But it's like, no, it's not. Because if you use material components as a requirement like we're meant to, it's not broken. Because then when you go to prepare your list, you don't get the whole list to prepare from. You have the list that you could prepare to prepare from, meaning that, oh, if this calls for unicorn horn and my DM has not graced me with a unicorn or the ability to purchase a unicorn horn somewhere, I don't know why I'm picking. I think I played Unstable Unicorns in the last month, so this is on my head.
Well, my druid's been walking around the house with a unicorn, so I mean, I get it.
I have so many questions, but oh no, I just realized the answer. Hello, I'm Kyle. I'm here now.
Welcome back, Kyle.
Thank you. It's good to be back. I don't know where I went, but I'm sure I had fun. But that's really what brings it in. And there might even be the case that they would have more spells that they could prepare, but they don't have the materials to do so. And then at that point in time, it's something that they have to track. They have to be very intentional for. I have a player in my party who is quite known for the overkill. This person will use their single greatest spell maxed out at the absolute max level that they can cast it at the almost earliest opportunity within a play session, and earned the character a nickname within the game of the Eviscerator. It's been a good gag for us. It's been a lot of fun. And it's made some encounters that were, meant to be warm-ups a little bit lackluster because they were over a lot faster because we just went for it. And obviously spell slots rein in on that, because then if I don't give them a chance for long rest, they're not going to get to do it again. But then materials would also rein that in.
Yes. I think really for me, I never really paid components that much of an attention, because at least when I was really starting out as a DM, it was a lot to keep track of, like you were kind of talking about. Really, the first time I really heard somebody use components was Liam O'Brien from Critical Role. and like he would actually like pull out, a copper wire, or I guess him and Sam Riegel, I think, were the two that were using it the most for their characters, but they would like pull out a copper wire and they would cast message through the copper wire because that's what it called.
Yep.
Or, one of them was like sulfur and whatever, and they would cast whatever spell was. And I was like, that is one of the coolest ways to flavor a spell. It's not just I cast fireball. It's not just I cast message. It's I do blah, 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 and therefore I can cast X. You know what I mean? So like, to me, it added a cool flavor that I hadn't heard before when I heard him talking about that. I know, and you and I had kind of talked about like if you have a spell that has a somatic component, like you have to be able to move your arms, but if you're tied up, you cannot cast that spell. And I think that it's not necessarily to try and hinder the game. It's like to help the player really kind of immerse themselves in like this first person kind of RPG, because I mean that's what you're doing, you're role playing, but you're like, okay, I can't just like lift my hand and say fireball. Like that's not how that works. Like you have to have sulfur and whatever else you need to mix with the sulfur to throw a burning ball of fire and decimate a bunch of people in that area.
And I think it allows, so I'm a person who loves to read fantasy novels. I don't have the time to read them as much as I want to. But one of my favorite that I've been reading lately, and I'm getting even more, each book in it I feel like has topped the previous book, and that is Saying Something. The series is great. Brandon Sanderson, his Mistborn 2 series is...
I've heard good things about that one.
One of the things that he does so fantastically well is his magic system. It is drastically different than D&D, but one of the coolest parts of it is how the materials matter so much, and it's a great sub-thread. And honestly, reading them at times when I was first reading them, I would forget. It was really hard to track, like what does what matters to who. But then the more you read it, the more it's like, oh, this is something at times it's like they run out. They're these super powerful beings, but they run out. And I was thinking like D&D has this and has this baked in and has had it baked in. And I just haven't enabled it. Because I was thinking one day I was reading that book and I was like, man, that'd be so cool if D&D worked that way. And I was like, wait a second, it does, just not my D&D.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to switch up. My party's been playing way too long now.
Right.
And it would be way too disruptive and it would feel like I was cutting them out at their knees. And so I'm not going to do that to them now, but definitely the next time I DM.
Yes.
I definitely don't want to hinder a new player at playing this role. And so I think like I do have to be more prepared. That's my job as the DM, is to help them out. And I think I'm more ready to tackle that now than I was 5 years ago.
Sure.
Or even really that I was 2 years ago. I'm more confident in that. Yes, there's still ways that I rule zero things. I do believe heavily in the rule of cool over always the strict written rule book. And there's moments that I've gone more lax because like, hey, this was the warm-up fight. It wasn't going to matter anyway. You say you do this fantastical thing and normally I'd say no, but so we're all laughing and we're like, all right, we agree that like this one time we're going to let this happen because it won't narratively pack us into a corner later. And I've also introduced a character who could swim faster than a boat once for the heck of it, for the laughs that it generated. So we're definitely still going to have the rule of cool. This doesn't eliminate it, but it brings an aspect to it that I think, if embraced by a role player, opens up so many more role play abilities.
I agree.
And more opportunities. Also gives more weight to when you come into a town and can go into those fun wear shops. Mm-hmm. So what seems like it's something that will actually take away things from spellcasters, I actually think it gives them something more powerful in return. And that's a deeper connection with their character to feel like, hey, this stuff is important to me. I'm not going to cast this spell because it's my best. Mm-hmm. I'm going to save it to where I need it.
I can buy that.
Kind of like how with the fighters, this is their favorite sword. This is a know-nothing battle. I'm not going to risk the crit fail and give the DM a chance to break my amazing sword against a run-of-the-mill orc. But that's a young green dragon. It's time to get out.
Yeah,
the flaming raging poisoning sword of doom. Shout out to another podcast I've listened to. But it gives that opportunity there because I think by not having the components matter, we are putting spellcasters a tier higher. That we take away their constraint, which does make them broken. And we don't have quite the equivalent way of easing up the other ones, because we're not saying, oh, hey, barbarian, you can just free rage. Where's your trigger for that? We're holding the other parties more true to their role play. And it's fun. I do enjoy it. I had a one-off once before, just a fun play session where none of my players were Magic players, and we had a really good time. I've had ones where all of them were spellcasters, and they didn't actually have as good of a time because there was nobody who could tank the damage.
Exactly. They lived up to their name of Glass Cannon, huh?
Yeah, it was cast and run. Everybody's turns were very much the same. I'm going to run my max distance and cast...
Ding dong bang.
Yep. Cast run. Flee, my lord. We're retreating in a positive direction. Yeah. I love this game.
I love spellcasters. Honestly, they are kind of an unsung hero, and they take a lot of flack in the beginning because they have next to no hit dice. They have next to no hit points, which is why they're glass cannons, but the cannon starts coming in when they start getting to like your level 4, level 5 spells, because that's when you're starting to get like fireball, like
Call Lightning,
Chain Lightning, I think starts coming into play.
Mm-hmm. Which at that point, Call Lightning doesn't feel that awesome anymore when you have Chain Lightning. Right? It's like, hey, I have its big brother now.
and he's mad.
Yeah, he's angry because you survived Call Lightning.
Right. But I tell you, I remember the first time I was reading through like my level 9 spells, because I'd never seen one actually perform before.
Yeah.
And when I came across Meteor Swarm, I thought that was the coolest ever spell to ever cast. It was a 9th level spell, and it was 40d6 worth of bludgeoning and fire damage just raining from the sky.
I want to roll that. I would be like, I know now we have so many tools to automate that rolling, but that's give me the dice, as many D6.
I want everybody's D6 times 2. Yep. Okay, I need everybody's D6.
Yeah, at that point, it's like if I'm holding less than 10 D6 in my hand for this, I am unsatisfied.
Oh no, you need the spill on the table that just everything. Oh. And then watch as you're in horror, as your players go, that's a 6, that's a 6, that's a 5, that's a 6, that's a 4, that's a 6. Ouch.
Oh, so you're saying I didn't roll it because they'd be like, oh, good, that's a 1, that's a 1. That's a...
Hey, your words, not mine. So
it's
self-fulfilling prophecy at that point.
I mean, we're 5 years in, and it hasn't. I've always been told it'll come around. Don't worry, one of these days you'll roll good. I'm still waiting for those days.
We also haven't hit the final boss battle yet, so
yeah, I'm hoping by then I don't need dice.
We'll just be like, ouch, ouch, and what's my new next character again?
The listeners, I think really what I'm getting to at this is I do believe that very strongly in the very first rule in the rule book today, that is DM's discretion. I do believe strongly in that, but I also believe that like some of the discretions that I've made in the past are not ones that I'd repeat because I've lived through it. I do think I'm a better DM now than I was then. I do think I also still have a long ways to go. If I start doing this component stuff, I'm going to mess it up at first. Oh, yeah. And I'm probably going to be overly strict at times when I go to be strict about it, and I'll learn to back it off. I'll find that happy medium that I think is the right answer most times. There's still going to be times that we goof the casting time because I didn't check or I misread, because there's been so many times I've gotten used to this the first time I play a new card in Magic, my other hobby, and then later I read the card again and go, oh no, that's not what it did. Same thing the first time you read a spell, when you're having a whole group of people, you're trying to make the ruling fast. I'm sure we'll mess it up. But the big thing is I do want it to feel like, okay, hey, me as a spellcaster, I'm not the break glass in case of emergency perfect answer to every scenario, which they haven't been. It's not quite that bad. I'm exaggerating to make my point. But I do feel like there's been times where my wizard's been like, okay, it's fine. Bind me, gag me, I'll cast my spell. And I want to be able to say like, hey, okay, how are you getting your material components?
If you are bound and gagged, yeah.
I once had one of my fighters tell me that he was going to use strength to hurt somebody else. And I was like, okay, that's not how rage works for one, but for two, tell me like, how are you using your strength here? Are you grappling them? Are you punching them?
I will squeeze them with what little arm movement I have
Yeah.
left
Yeah,
after my
he's-
hands are bound.
That was when he said that sentence to me. I was like, I think my brain broke. I don't. Like, I get you want to use your strength stat for the attack because you're a strong boy, but tell me how you're doing.
I also think that ritual based or ritual tagged spells are also unsung heroes
Yes.
that you can use in your campaigns. And I honestly don't think they get as much love because I don't think people really understand how that works.
Yep.
And I think, for example, let's say you're, dungeon diving somewhere and your wizard blows most of his spells, right? Basically, what he could do is use a ritual. And what that would allow him to do is take 10 minutes and not use a spell slot, but still cast Identify on
Yep.
on a magic item or a potential magic item that they found. That's the only one that comes to mind as a ritual, but I obviously there are plenty of them in the book.
Yeah. There's so many that have that ritual tag on it. A mistake I see new players make a lot is say, "Well, I can't cast that. It's a ritual. I have to spend the ritual time on it."
Mhm.
And it's like, no, that means you can.
Yeah, correct.
And the casting time is what the time is, and that's the block on some of those ones being your spur of the moment combat abilities.
Right.
Those are typically not combat, like they're not. I'm not always, but they're typically not the ones that's like reads and you cast this and it deals the damage.
A ritual is not something you can do in 6 seconds, obviously. Like, you have to take your time, whether it's a minute, 10 minutes, or 11 minutes sometimes, depending on how you do it. Like, you actually have to take the time. Your character has to focus on whatever it is they're trying to do in that particular ritual to actually make it come true.
Yep.
Now, the great thing about this, you don't have to roll to see if it succeeds or fails usually.
Mhm.
I think you did in older editions because, like, in 4th edition, this is the one that's coming to mind, like, you would have something like sending. Sending
Yep.
for them was like you would roll a d20 plus your modifiers or whatever, and if you got like 25 or less, it would go like 500 miles. If you went like 25 to 35, it was like 1,000 miles, and then like it would kind of like based on whatever your check was, it would tell you how far from you could send that spell.
Yep.
And then if that person was in that radius, then they could get it. If they were outside of that radius, then they would.
Right, and you often didn't know. That was the DM's. The DM would have to know prior to you running
Correct.
the check. But also, listeners, and the mods were a little bit. We dealt with bigger numbers.
Yes, a lot bigger numbers.
So when he says 25, I felt the void of all my 5e only players saying, "Well, I'd never do it then."
How would I ever roll a 40?
Yeah.
You'd be like level 15. So
Yep. And if it, like I said, we just dealt with bigger numbers back then than we do now. But also, I think rituals are a fun opportunity to have that narrative to paint the picture.
mhm.
I love to ask that of my players. Paint the picture for me. What are you doing? What is your ritual? Because that can be so many things. Are you dancing in a circle? Are you sitting and doing this? Are you like read your components, your materials? Are you burning
Are
something?
you in the downward dog or the child's pose? Are you?
yeah.
I mean, it's like
Are you standing on one leg with your other leg, like your foot pressed against your knee, and you're in the like a Zen position?
Yeah.
Are you waving your hands in the air?
Yeah.
Like, think back to some of the for just as I'm, we've not been shy about our MCU fandom on this podcast in the past.
That's true.
But like,
Please don't.
are
sue us.
you doing like the Doctor Strange hand motions, or
Oh,
for my
yeah.
Naruto fans? Is it season 1 and you are doing the hand motions like crazy? Like, paint that picture. Tell us what you're doing. It's another chance to connect to your character and also to give the other players, like maybe you have a character who just belittles magic. So he sees you doing all this. And so he's just now going to have more tools in his toolbox for making fun of you later. Because you were dancing around like a fool. It might have worked. But
Yeah, like Ted Mosby in the Rain Dance. If those of you who
I love
understand,
him. It was such a good show.
Anyway,
Like Shay mentioned, there has been multiple takes on spellcast in D&D. The different revisions. There's been different ways of tracking your spells and casting spells. Like Shay said, rituals did not used to be guaranteed successes when you'd perform the ritual.
Mhm.
There's the spell slots versus spell points. I've also seen like the card spend, which is basically like bringing in Magic the Gathering type idea, but instead of using mana, you just like, all right, I use this card for it. So you just had basically your number of cards. You weren't going to cast it more than the card that you had, which is a weird take on not weird, sorry, for those who love it out there, it's a neat take on having just the cards instead of tracking your character sheet for those spells. And I think it was kind of a fun way to institute that. I don't think it's what Wizards had in mind, but if it works and it's fun for your playgroup, then that's the right answer for you.
Well, and I think too, like going back into spell slots in older editions, and forgive me, those of you who are 3.5 and earlier, because I don't know that system at all. But like I know for 4th edition, and even the difference between 4th and I think Pathfinder is very similar to this versus 5th edition. In 4th edition, you had dailies, encounters, and at wills, right? So at wills obviously would be like your encounter, like your cantrips, right? But if you had an encounter power, you could use it once per fight. If it was a daily power, you could only use it once a day, and you had to take a long rest before you could do that again. With 5th edition, I honestly like that situation better. Now, granted, in the older editions, you hit for a lot more damage because those were bigger numbers in that edition.
Yep.
But if you say, for example, 4 first level slots and 3 second levels and whatever, you could, in theory, cast the same second level spell 3 different times. Or you could spend it to cast 3 different spells. It was more up to you versus back in like 4th edition, once you used that, it was done. Unless you had something like a reliable tag on there, whereas like if you missed, then you could do it again, or like there was other nuances that you could kind of work around that. But I love the ability to, if I missed them with a fireball the first time, I could cast fireball again and try and hit them again. I wouldn't necessarily be out of a fireball for the rest of that day. I love the versatility that 5th edition brought when they brought that in, and I'm not sure exactly how the 1D&D is going to capitalize on that, if they're really going to capitalize much differently out of that.
Right.
But like just having that customization again from 5th edition that you didn't have in 4th ed, you know, like when you had those, you were locked into that. Like you had to stay in that until you either leveled up, and then that's when you could retrain for a different spell or different whatever. Like it wasn't just like daily, you could pick a different one.
Right. I do think that that's a big thing of what Wizards is going for, is they want you to feel more free to play the character the way you want to play the character when you're playing the character. Mm-hmm. And I do think that there's a lot to be said for that, and it's very cool. I think that Wizards has been trying to do a lot to make the game more new player friendly while still allowing it to be fun and optimizable for experienced players.
Agreed.
And, just like any game, they have not all been home runs, and they won't always be home runs. But I do commend them for trying to do that, because we did experience the biggest boom in popularity in D&D history just a couple years ago.
Yeah, especially with the pandemic. I mean, everybody was home and like, hey, what else am I going to do with my time? Hey, I'll play.
And for those of you out there who are like, oh no, 3.5 is the best ever, or awesome, your Pathfinder 4th edition is the best ever.
Recorded in a podcast, I'll listen to it.
100%, yeah. Like you are not wrong. Whatever is the most fun for you is the best version. If that's 5e right now for you, or if that's 1D&D that's about to come out, or if that's 3.5, or if you're an OG version 1 player, or if you're a Pathfinder
God bless
guy
you.
or gal, like it's the right answer for you. I'm not going to disparage any of the additions. I think all of them have had strengths, and all of them have had weaknesses, and some of them, the weakness has just been it was complicated, but once you learned it, it was amazing. And others, I know that, the complaint against 5th edition is that like, yeah, it's easier to get into, but look at all that was lost. And I think what Wizards are trying to go for is there's power in simplicity.
Yep.
And I think that's the thing here, is like this flexibility. It's because we removed a complex pre-choice, and that complex pre-choice, it was not a bad thing for experienced players. It allowed you to really say, like, this is who my character is, and I'm going to mold them, and that's going to shape my role play, and I'm going to get fully immersed, and that's a instant choice that's going to shape me, and it's a ton of fun. It really is. But for a new player, it's like, that's daunting, and you get that failure to launch. But then for experienced players in this new system, it's still like there's nothing stopping you from saying, like, these are the spells I'm going to focus at. Mm-hmm. We have the freedom to do that. Yes, the rules won't constrain you there, so you also have the freedom to optimize each day, too. Mm-hmm. Optimize with the play group that we have. I really am not a DM that pushes my party to optimize. I like the fun, wacky stuff.
Yeah.
And I know people that I talk to frequently about D&D that and if I talk long enough, I will hear the line, well, that's not really optimum. And they're right. They're 100% right. They've never been wrong when they've said that.
I don't think optimizing is a bad thing.
No, it's not at all.
I've also heard of people like anti-optimizing, where like they're like literally intentionally trying to throw a wrench in their character. And I think that's okay, and especially when it comes to, you know, spells in particular. Like if you wanted to have a utility-based wizard that's not really a fighting type wizard, that's fine.
Yep.
But you also need to be aware of the fact that your fighting abilities are going to be hindered severely if you don't take at least a couple, you know, anti-defense, you know, spells.
I would say, like, in the game, let your party find out about it.
Mm-hmm.
Outside the game, player knowledge, let the players know about it beforehand. Yeah. Like, that's definitely a type of thing. Don't surprise your playgroup, because a party that does not want to, a party of players that they, as people, do not want to play the optimum build all the time, and they don't always want to be pushed to play the optimum build.
Mm-hmm.
It's jarring and it almost feels unwelcoming when you have that one guy or person who's really pushing for optimized. They themselves are optimized, or they're pushing the group top.
Yeah, I could buy that.
But the reverse is just the same. When you have a whole group that, like, I am trying to get the most out of my character, the most efficient that they can be in combat, the technically best skills are what I'm going to choose every time. And then you insert one player who's not that.
Yeah.
Well, then they're the one that's not on board. They're the one holding the party down. They're the one making it not fun. And so that's where ultimately, like, we've said this so many times, it all comes back to that pre-conversation. Oh, yeah. It really does. I think what I found is the answer to absolutely every single problem that you will encounter in D&D is to talk about it. And that's honestly why I love this game so much.
Because we are chatty Cathys and we talk about everything.
Absolutely. But again, like Shay was saying, neither of these play styles are wrong. And there is a middle play style where it's like, if I don't have an otherwise thing about my character that says I wouldn't pick that, then yeah, I'll pick the optimum one. But I have a player who his character, one of his core personality traits is that he is incredibly lazy. So when he goes to level up and he gets to pick a new spell, and there's a spell that will enable his laziness. So if he could gain the ability to levitate, so that he wouldn't have to walk even just for a short period of time, he would. Yeah, or he could take a super powerful spell that'd be great in combat. You bet he's taking that levitate.
Oh, absolutely. And
I love that about him. But I also have players in my play group that's like, they do want, like, they're fighters, so they want to make sure that they're doing the most amount of damage. Mm-hmm. So they're always looking to upgrade their armor, upgrade their weapons, take the right stat, the right skill increase. But occasionally stuff will come up that's just like, well, yeah, like we've established over playing that my character is afraid of bathtubs. So we obviously need an alternative way to get to bathe. And so if we have a chance to take that.
Well, we haven't invented the fire hose yet, but give the artificer a minute, he'll get it.
Yep. And that's the fun stuff that comes in with my play group. And I really do let them have freedom with that. But I think, bringing this full circle around from the tangent that we went off on.
Yeah.
Like whatever magic system that you establish that you're going to run with, if you're going to go true to the rule book, if you're going to insert one of the alternate rule forms online, I do want to challenge, like, think through what are the constraints on this and where is your stance, and let that be decided, and then don't change it throughout your campaign, but learn from it each time. Because like I said, in the future, when I DM a new campaign, that material component, I'm sticking with the spell slot true to the rulebook. I'm still going to do the vocal and the semantic, but that material component I am going to pay a lot more attention to next time I DM. But I'm not going to change the one I'm doing now, because they're 6 levels in.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be... I don't expect that they've tracked their inventory for it, because I haven't enforced it, so I guarantee they don't have the copper wire now for sending. But
right
in the future, I want to do that because of the fun narrative aspects it gives, the drawbacks it puts on it, and instituting that choice of, well, yes, I would absolutely love to cast Moonbeam here, but I don't know if Moonbeam has a material component. I don't have it in front of me right
Off the top of
now.
my head, I don't know.
But or I'd love to cast my most powerful combat spell right now. But if I do that now, I'm going to be out of this, and I'm not going to be able to cast it again until we get to a store. Or I find it laying around. We're in the middle of a desert, and this is found in water.
Yep.
So
good luck.
I think also that can be something that we can build in to the campaign that we're building, which we'll talk about next episode as we wrap that up. It's just an aspect that we can build into there of like how that's fun, finding all that stuff. When we actually put out the module, we won't go over it when we do next episode, I don't think. But I think that's just a fun thing that I'm going to start paying a lot more attention to, of how to tease out when I get to the next campaign that I run.
I think I've offered it up to my more seasoned players. I have a couple people that it's either their first campaign or first campaign in a while in 5th edition. So I don't push them for it, but if they do it, I'm like, yay, I'm excited. I'm like super excited that they're, kind of immersing themselves in that role play, but I'm not like enforcing it. But I think I agree with you. I think in the next campaign that I run, I think I will be a little bit more stickler about it. Something else that I thought about when you were saying that too, as far as searching for material components, that adds a weight factor that most people don't, or most DMs that I know of, don't really care about. I think within reason, most people just kind of assume that you can do that, or people have like a bag of holding that you can just throw stuff into.
Yeah, but the bag of holding actually does have a limit.
It does, like 500 pounds, I think.
It's a big limit.
I modified mine for my party. I made it 1,000 because I'm like, I want you to carry a lot of stuff, and where you're going, you're going to need to carry a lot of stuff. So I did that.
I can't remember. There is a next tier magic item above the bag of holding that actually is a greater carry amount.
I think it's a handy haversack. I think.
That's what it is. Thank you. Because it's a really fun name, but the common one that everybody knows is bag of holding. And I've heard like players describe it as an infinite bag, and it's like, really, it's not. It does have a limit. It's a giant limit,
in air quotes, to a point.
Yep.
And obviously, like it's basically the size of a backpack. So if you can't fit in a backpack, it's not going to fit.
Right. My party has tried to stuff a human in there before. we talked about the moral reasons why I didn't want to allow that to happen.
I'm like, you're going to need some air.
Yes. It's like, are you leaving the top of the bag open? What's the wind resistance?
Not to mention, you'd have to have somebody have their hand in the bag at all times, summoning them to the top so that way they could actually breathe.
Yep.
Because they're in a pocket dimension.
Yep. And
I don't think pocket dimensions usually have air.
I didn't want to go there, so we had a lot of problems with it. I think like that's something that my party has recently themselves started bringing up to the attention point. Like, well, I don't think I would love to take that, but I can't carry that anymore. Can we put this in bag of holding, or can you other individual carry this for me?
Right.
And I love that came up naturally. I didn't bring that about as a DM.
Ain't it great?
Yeah, and so then I started policing it because they brought it to attention. And that was, I think, the genesis of me really taking a look at where I was lax on rules and where I wasn't lax on rules, and kind of asking myself why I did that. Some of it I was like, yeah, because I did that because I don't want to spend time in our game doing that because we don't get to play enough. If we got to play more, I would do that. And other parts of it's like, no, that was because I was new and I didn't want to worry about it.
Yep.
I'm not new anymore. I could do this. I've gotten the stuff that was hard to me before down enough that I feel like I can take this on. And a lot of it isn't you. It's not really a significant more amount of work to us as DMs. It's maybe one additional question you ask. But a lot of times with our players, once you teach them that, hey, I look out for that. Once I teach them, hey, I look out for that, then they really do look out for that. I've not had really, maybe if like here now when my party meets again here in a week, it'll be the first time in a couple months that we've played real campaign. Last time we played, it was a one-off, so I'm much more lax in a one-off than I am in the real campaign. And that's saying a lot because I think I am kind of a laid-back DM just by nature. That's my personality type.
Same.
But I am going to have to remind them of stuff. Sometimes it's like, I joke that I'm teaching them how to reread their character sheet, but also it's an exercise for me too, how to reread my notes, how to reread my character sheets.
Oh, for sure.
Because It's amazing when you don't open it up for a little bit, how stuff that like you flew to. We had it at the start of this recording where I was like, Shay, where do I keep my notes? And you're like, I don't know, Kyle.
Like, over there.
Found them. But I had to ask. I was like, oh,
Nailed
Shay, I prepared a while ago.
Yeah, just the spells in general, I think, especially, I remember when I was a new player, like, spells to me were daunting because there's so many different, like, options. There's so many different, like, and not even options, just so many things that kind of go into those. And so, like, if you kind of get overwhelmed, I think, especially as a new player, just worry about the slots. And as you gain experience and you grow more comfortable with it, that's when you can really start enveloping the nuances of like the components, the semantics, the verbals, the actual component parts, like to really engross yourself into the role playing. I think that, like I said earlier, it adds a flavor and a first person ownership to what you're doing. It's like, I do this, I do that. It's not just, a way to say I cast Fireball, or like I like Fireball apparently for some reason, but
yeah, that we all have our spells that we just think of, like
I cast Wish. Oh wait, no, that didn't work.
Wish is a broken spell. But
yes, that's why it's a wish.
Yep. But I also was thinking of it's where do you pull it out of? Because wizards, your cloak is not just a standard traveler's cloak. You have your wizard's cloak.
Yep.
Is it for your powder for Fireball, your sulfur? Is it in your sleeve? Do you have a quick, cool draw that you do for it to get it into your hand? Or are you opening your cloak, reaching into a pouch at your belt? So it takes you a second. Or are you kind of a new wizard, and so you're like, oh no, it's combat. Let me get my backpack off.
Hold on, I need this massive book that I draw like a sword. Hold on.
Yep. And now I get my book out. I got my 6 Ziploc baggies.
I am prepared today, dadgummit.
But getting back to actual game, so I do think like the role play aspect of that, where you get to really say a thing that when we're in the middle of doing it, it feels so natural and it's so much fun. And it's that bit where you're playing the game, you don't even feel like you're playing a game anymore. You're telling a story and the dice are part of it and it's all just flowing. But when you have the painting the picture, like instead of saying like I attack with my broadaxe, when they actually talk about like drawing it and how they bring it around or how they step, and it feels like, oh man, we're talking novel level detail here, and this is really fun. And some play groups, like, that's what we live for, and other play groups are like, that's the extra fluff. But then mechanic wise, an aspect that I struggled with big time when I first played a spellcaster was actually prepared spells, which is something I'm very excited for, being much like not more common, is already pretty common, but spread all the way around when we get to 1D&D. The thing I struggle with that is like, all right, when I go to prepare this, technically speaking, like DM, do I got to give this to you? Like, everybody else is going to show up ready to play. Do I got to be like, time out, guys, I got to look and remember what I prepared last time? Like, how do we do this? And I think one thing that those of you that have embraced the more technical tools, the online tool sets, now so much easier. Like, you click the little radio dial next to the ones you prepared and it'll track it for you.
Oh, yeah.
So like that's there and that's neat. But that whole like, do you need to turn it into your DM or not? I have not to date required that of my players, and I don't plan to. That's not something that I think I'm going to do, especially if it's this group again. We don't have that feeling of me versus the party. It's a collaborative story, and so I think none of us want to cheat it. So I'm not worried about a player casting a spell that they didn't prepare as if they prepared it. Now, if it was their first time ever playing again and I was trying to be more strict to this, I might say, yeah, just go ahead and shoot that to me. Not so I'm policing you, but so when we come back, both of us have this and I have a chance to remind you in case you're like, hey, it didn't say.
Yeah.
I don't remember. It's kind of like also with that health tracking aspect of it. Strictly for role play and immersion's sake, I don't actually want to know as DM where your health's at very often. Honestly, the only time I ask is when I'm like, all right, this isn't meant to be the fight. You know?
I mean, the only time I'm really worried about is like if you're down. Like, if you're down and like it's a animal that would try to like intentionally
go for it.
Yeah. I think for me, I probably assume, and this is probably, bad of me as a DM, but when players go to a new town or a village, like they can stop by someplace, like whether it's a general goods store, an apothecary of some sort, or something to that effect, where they can just buy the components. Like, I just kind of do like a big brush over of like, you buy your components. So that way it's like you have them technically in your component pouch. Or, I mean, I guess for that matter, sometimes different classes, and forgive me for not having this on top of my head, but some of them you can do a spellcasting focus and that you don't require the component pouch. So everything kind of goes from your focus, whether that's a wand, a staff, or whatever you want to use as your focus.
Yep.
So that way you don't have to necessarily worry about a components pouch. But I think for flavor context, especially for like wizards or warlocks, sorcerers, I think it's just really fun for them to just whip out, this certain component and use it to cast whatever.
Yep.
I think it's a really nice red pepper flake on top of a nice pizza. You know what I mean? It's just a nice flavor and a dash of heat.
And what's weird is it's one of the most gamified, like, this is one of the most RPG elements of this RPG, like this roleplay game, because thinking back to playing Final Fantasy, you pick up weird knickknacks, like you fight a bat, now you have Batwing in your inventory.
Or Skyrim, I mean, you fight anything, you pick up a pair of shoes, a boot, tunic, whatever, and
raw silk.
Yeah,
if you fought a spider, and so it's really like one of the most RPG elements of the game, but it also, when done right and when embraced, it can be a big enabler for feeling connected to your character, feeling connected to the world. Anything that makes us feel more immersed, anything that gives the world a little bit more detail, a little bit more life, I love. That's the part of D&D, I think I've said it before in this podcast, that the actual rolling of the dice I do find satisfying. I do like rolling dice. I love getting new dice, but my favorite part of the game is when we're painting the picture, we're immersed in the world and we're role-playing. It's either deep discussion, deep investigation, meaningful combat. Like that's the stuff that as a DM I live for. When it's the combat that's like I'm reminding you how to play your character sheet, but for some reason this combat just won't end, people are rolling bad or something like those aren't what I'm here for. They're fun, they're great. I do them for a reason. But that's not the memories I'm going to have forever of D&D. The memories I have forever in D&D are the really immersed moments, or the really funny moments, or the really emotional moments, and anything that can help us get more immersed so we have more of those, I love. And I do think that, I strongly believe that this will be, I think it won't be on day one. Just because like it will be something new that we're talking about. But the first time that my wizard says, I pull out the old Batwing from my pouch, I'm gonna be like, you do what now? It's like,
I think it's got some stank on it.
Yeah. How are you storing that?
You don't want to know.
And that hypothetical is even just fun, and so I'm looking forward to it. So when you say like you brushing over them, buying the components. And the one thing that I've done for my fighter who's focused on archery, I've always told him that you don't have to tell me that you picked up the arrows after a fight. Or my guys who throw their hand axes, I've told them you don't have to tell me that you collect that, because again, we play once a month and we have like 3.5 hours max that we get to play. And so I really do want us to drive story when we're together. And so I don't know, like I want material components to be a focus, but I don't want it to be the focus.
Yeah.
I've yet to decide on that. I tried something very recently in my play group where we were in a town and I said, all right, you tell me what you'd buy from here. Here's the type of things you can find. And this is the level of stuff you can get. And you have the money you want, like go buy stuff. I tried that out because I didn't want to spend time role playing a shop.
Right.
Nah, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel that noise about it. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel like it was a success. I'm probably going to keep exploring for how I want to do that in my campaign. And so that's because, again, if we played more frequently or if we played for longer at a shot, I would definitely role play those purchases. And I'd even maybe say, like, tell me you picked this up.
Or are you just trying to get out of making shop?
No, I actually like anytime I can make a character, it's great.
So that way we don't ask her name, even though
I've trained you guys to ask names now, and now you'll ask me for every name, even if I just mentioned that there's a passerby that you know I did not give a name to. So, but that's why I have my book of random NPCs.
That's right. Each separately, pages not included.
Exactly.
Which is kind of oxymoronic if you're talking about a book, but you know.
You buy the binding and then you pay for DLC to get the pages. This is a terrible, who have I become?
Oh, you know you're an IT guy, Wet.
All right, everybody, it is time for some game updates. Whoop, whoop. Let's see what we've got this time. All right, listeners, DM Shay here. Just a quick update on what we did this month. So we actually did not have the full group just due to life and things. So we were able to do a one shot, and we rolled the dice because that's usually what we'll do. We'll roll a d20 and we'll see what level we make our characters. And the dice decided we were going to be level 18. So this was kind of fun, actually. I don't know if I've ever ran a 18th level campaign. I mean, one shot, anything above. I think before that was 14 was my highest. So that was really fun. We had 2 druids, a monk. Oh shoot, it's been a minute. I gotta remember. Anyway, so they ended up running into an old friend. We're part of a guild. They got a message from an old friend saying, "Hey, my town mayor isn't acting right. He's been weird for the last 6 months or something like that." So they went and visited him, and come to find out that the mansion was ran by doppelgangers of the servants there in the house, and they quickly informed the party that the mayor was downstairs below the room. Come to find out, well, the mayor, quote unquote, was actually a guise for an ancient red dragon who was trying to build its lair secretly and quietly. Well, they kind of interrupted that, and then a fight ensued, and through some trickery and Tamagotchi that they are known for, they were able to take out the ancient red dragon. I had a couple of mishaps on mine because my rolls were not working for me. I did get 1 fire breath off, so I at least got that. But other than that, that's really about the extent of it. So yeah, that's what we did. And hopefully we'll get the full group back for September, and we'll continue the story proper and see what happens from there.
Well, listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion about spells and components. And honestly, we would love to hear what you think. Did we miss something on this? Is there something you would love to hear us talk more about? We would love to talk to you as well. So if you would be so kind to reach out to us on our email at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. We would love to talk the emails away with you about this topic, about any other topic. You can hit us up on the Dungeon Master Talk Facebook page. You can find us on X and Instagram, I believe, at DMT the podcast, and then the hashtag Dungeon Master Talk, or hit us up in the comments on YouTube. We want to talk to you. We would love to hear your input and your thoughts on all of this. And again, thank you for spending your time with us each and every time we drop an episode. It's just really means the world to us. And if you would do us a favor and like and subscribe to the podcast, that would be so helpful in getting the word about Dungeon Master Talk out to the masses. We would just super appreciate that as well. So for all of us here at DMT, I am Shay.
And I'm Kyle.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Bye guys.
Peace.